Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show here at the Tower of Power concert this evening in Scottsdale. And I got a chance today to speak to an incredible organ player, part of Tower of Power. Roger Smith, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Bless you, man. You know, I just want to talk about John Turk for a minute. Did you play with Turk in Sacramento growing up?
I sat in with him. We never played in the same band.
He was an elder to you.
Yes, and he was one of the guys that I learned from. Him, Larry Bradford. Matter of fact, Larry showed me one of my first extensions, how to play organ without, because I had big hands. So he said, "Oh man, start here. You can stretch that in 11. When you get older, you're gonna be able to do a 12." And that's what I do, So yeah, those guys mean a lot.
So Bradford was up in Sacramento as well?
Bradford played in a group called Strength years ago, and that was with Bobby G. Oh man, they were tough, man.
So, in terms of like your own sort of experience with the organ, I mean, can you talk about how you learned to sort of leave the head of the tune and play beyond what you know? Where did you think you crossed that threshold?
Oh man,
was it just a natural thing?
Well, yeah, I'm still naturally trying to find that threshold.
Yeah.
But I think with all the organ players that I listened to, especially the emergence of Chester Thompson. Now, I knew about him prior to being with Tower, but never really paid that much attention because I was really into Bubba and all these other guys. And when Chester came through and started doing what he was doing in Tower of Power, that flipped the script. And it put soloing in a whole nother context for me.
Can you just go a little bit deep? Because he wasn't kicking pedals. If I remember correctly, Garibaldi said Rocco was still playing bass.
Yeah, Rocco was still playing bass.
So, I mean, there was no bass pedals, but he was just...
There was no funkifiers, but he was mimicking Rocco, the gigs that I saw. The ones that I saw. I'm no expert at it. I wasn't at rehearsals, but he was mimicking some of the stuff.
What was it about those players at that time that allowed them to sort of go to that third stream? To me, that was like an extension of the musical vocabulary. You listen to any of Bubba's albums at that time, it was very angular stuff, and I just wonder, were you part of the academy at all, or were you completely a street scholar?
No, I was totally street. I'm totally self-taught. To this day, I have a hard time looking at a chart.
Did you go on the Chitlin circuit?
Yes, I did, with the late Freddie King.
Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah, that was awesome. I'm from Texas. Wow. Long story short, had a group there that I started years and years ago called Blind Melon. And we used to play at the Armadillo World headquarters all the time. In Blind Melon,
Captain Beefheart played there, yeah.
Yeah, it was...
Everyone played there.
It was a young Eric Johnson, he was about 14, Roscoe Beck on bass, and Tomas Ramirez and other players. Freddie would always play there along with everybody else. So he shows up one time there, my organ's on stage because I knew he needed to use it. But his organ player didn't show up, so I went knocking on his door, and I said, "Hey, Freddie, I'll play for you tonight." He said, "Okay," and that's what happened.
Were his shows? Was it a formula trip show, or were there certain tunes that lent themselves to stretching out?
A lot of them lent themselves, especially with me in the band, because I wasn't his permanent organ player,
right.
And I brought a different flavor. So I really can't speak on it because since I wasn't part of the core, I can't say how he directed his show. All I know is that I had a blast every night for 5 weeks that I was with him.
Some profound experiences just with him as sort of an iconic elder musician.
Yeah, and that was the first pro gig I've ever had in my life.
I'm wondering, you went through the 70s as a road dog. I mean, you toured quite a bit in the 70s, is it fair to say?
Yeah, I played quite a bit.
Well, because I remember Steve Gadd talking about the Python Club in Rochester and Groove Holmes would come through and they'd have a hearse.
Yeah.
They'd put it in the hearse, the B3. Yeah. What was your means of transporting it around? Or did you have to play the dog du jour?
I had a
Thank you so much.
Dad had a Dodge pickup, a yellow, lemon yellow Dodge pickup that I used to put that my friend Larry Davis's C3 in. That thing,
C3, yeah.
C3.
Yeah.
But we were young and stupid, so we loaded that sucker everywhere, man.
Am I delusional, or were there crazy freaks like me in the crowd at Popeyes? I mean, I want to believe that you were down there playing to a lot, that the public, that music, the significance of music was much higher in our culture at that time.
It was. It was compared. You can't even compare that times. I remember the at least 100 times back then I would go see Tower of Power, and before Chester and during Chester, when Chester came along, that was so profound. But
every time.
yeah.
Oh, yo, what?
But yeah, that changed a lot. I didn't do too many gigs in the Bay. Most of my stuff was in Sacramento, man, and in Texas.
Was there a studio scene in Sacramento at all?
Back then, yes, there was.
What was Cortez was talking about Round Table Pizza, a jingle. That was his first studio date, roughly mid-'70s, something like that.
I had
it was a
nothing.
Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
What was your first date in the studio that you maybe a record date?
A record date, man. That was my own with Blind Nose.
And
that was in Austin. That was in 1971. And then the second one was with Jeff Beck when I was in Europe with him. And we recorded, I forget, Sir Albert Hall. That was...
And that came out on vinyl.
As far as I know.
I mean, this is important stuff. If I'm digging through the bins, I want to be able to see it. Did you... what is it about Doc and Emilio specifically, Garibaldi as well, in terms of like the striving for excellence?
It's always.
This is the thing, because I'm 45. A lot of cats in my generation, through no fault of their own, believe that success comes through commodities, collecting things, prestige. To me, as I've learned through Doc Kupka, all these other cats, it's striving for excellence on the bandstand. If you listen to that Little Feat album with Tower of Power, late '70s, live from England.
Yeah.
It's striving for excellence. You already had that in your constitution to begin with, but I just want you to talk to younger cats about taking that to the bandstand every night.
Okay. I'll give you an example. What made me really work and strive to be a better player, a better participant in a big ensemble. I was doing a jazz gig. Al Bent was on trombone and stuff. Steve Gundy was playing saxophone.
Sacramento?
Yes, and there's one of the little funky jazz clubs.
Yeah.
And Bob Bell was on bass, and Jimmy Daniels, the late Jimmy Daniels, who played with played with Stan and Troy Rogers and Bud Shank and all those guys.
Really?
And so they would come by and try and teach me these standards, right? I was young, stupid, and kind of blew it off and blew over it. Long story short, we're on set. They were doing one of these tunes that had 4 heavy changes per bar. And everybody left the stage with the exception of the drummer, the bass player, and myself. I made it through the first 2 bars. And when I say train wreck, it was the worst pile of crap in the world. And Steve Gundy was out in the audience and he started yelling at me.
What?
Wow. Yeah, he started yelling, not, when I say yelling, explicative deleted. He called me everything, said, you dumb mother, and then the audience started going off. And so Bob Bell, thank God, God bless him, the late Bob Bell, took his bass, picked it up, and kind of got in front of me and started soloing. He says, get your shit and get out of here.
Right, get off the bandstand.
Get your shit and get out of here. That was the most important lesson to
What
learn.
was that lesson?
The lesson was learn, listen, and practice your stuff. Now with Tower of Power is a whole nother thing because it's parts. If your parts don't sync in with everybody and you're overplaying or overstepping, it's a mess. It took me a year to learn how to participate in this band properly and to have my own voice.
Did you spend your time kind of just comping?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, matter of fact.
I mean, you were smoking when I saw you before COVID. You were but that to me is. Are there Christmas tunes that you could transition into Tower of Power tunes? To me, like that would be a hypnotic segue.
Well, We'll find out tonight. You be the judge.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I just want you to tell me a great Clifford Coulter story before we go, because you know what? I don't ever want anyone to ever forget that cat.
Well, Bubba Coulter used to always call Oregon summits, and we'd all get together.
He did?
Yeah. And it was Bradford before he died. John Turk, Clifford, Chester,
Ronnie Beck, maybe?
Ronnie. Well, Ronnie wasn't an organ player.
Sure, of course. It's not an organ song, right?
Yeah, and so we just go have breakfast and talk much shit as we could, and talk about Oregon, mostly dogging some Oregon players that couldn't play, But for me, I had much to say, not that much to say, because these were my idols, So I was able and blessed enough to.
You're telling me you went to breakfast with Bradford, Bubba, like all these B3 cats.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the joint?
I can't remember. I'm sorry.
The point is that that dude was completely, he was off the grid, in terms of like just expanding music vocabulary and just a very decent human being.
That he was. He'd always call up. He'd call me way before COVID, before he passed. I'd hear from him at least 2-3 times a year. How you doing, young man? We're so proud of you. You're in the band, and blah, 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 blah. And it meant so much to me. It meant, just to hear from Chester and Bubba, it was amazing.
Tell me a good bus story on this trip. You guys are on tour bus. I mean, I hang with a lot of Road Dog musicians.
Well, see, I'd have to tell you without Doc and Mark in the room.
We'll do one over the phone, man.
Give the sanitized version.
The sanitized version, Doc?
Doc.
No, our bus trips are, what? I must say, like, we have the back lounge and we have the front lounge.
Yeah.
Now, you come to the back lounge, sometimes it gets a little raucous. We talk a lot of crap back there and laugh and joke and make a mess back there. Then you go to the front lounge.
Upper
No,
crust.
wait, you go to the front lounge. And there's the front lounge for you. What did you just hear?
Silence.
Thank you. It's very quiet. You might hear the TV going. Doc may be
It's like
watching.
an ashram up there.
Sometimes, well, Doc watches Sports Center.
Right.
And,
And sound off or no?
No, sound's on. And then Jerry, it depends on who he's talking to. If Tom is up there, Tom will have his earphones in and they're listening to songs and discussing passages in certain tunes.
Oh, I dig.
And
They're listening back to the gigs show?
No, it could be.
Yeah.
But mostly other players.
I dig.
But our bus trips are pretty tame.
I wish you guys were going on the 2 a.m. to El Cajon this morning. I don't like getting up, but that's a hell of a trip during the day. But you'll figure it out. I'm so fired up to see you guys play tonight, man. Roger Smith, thank you so much for being
You're
part of the
welcome,
show,
man.
We'll do it over the phone.
And you really pull up a lot of memories.
Yeah, just improvise, baby.
You pulled up a lot of memories, man.
It's the Jake Feinberg Show. See you later.